I want to throw back to our first episode that we ever did. There was Jim and I went and saw Us back on episode 1 of the movie hour. We talked about...
Oh, yeah, I know what's coming. This is amazing.
We talked about this guy who nearly sent Jim into a panic attack. He farted throughout the entire movie. He would dig around in his big popcorn bowl for kernels that weren't there. And
they were there. He would just move them around.
Exactly. And he had this big tub of some soda and just like would slurp on it the entire movie.
And comment throughout
the movie, just say weird comments. Oh, that was really cool. So Dave and I had the pleasure of going to the early screening of John Wick yesterday.
John Wick 3.
John Wick 3 Parabellum. And we get there. I had 2 gripes with this movie. The first gripe is that we had to sit in the front row. The front row was it was
so
rough.
hard.
It was rough.
If we would have been 1 inch closer, it would have been unwatchable.
It was still
You
still
had
a
to
good time.
choose what part of the screen to look at.
Exactly. And then the second issue is the same
No.
guy
No.
sat next to me.
No.
Yep.
The odds.
odds.
The gods hate me or something, because literally I remember sitting there. Dave and I got there fairly early, and we just kind of sat there and we're like, wow, we're sitting in the front row. Man, nobody likes us yet. So we're just sitting there. And then
Like VIP tickets, huh, Braden?
and they said VIP on them. So, and we got there, and then all of a sudden I see this guy kind of mosey his way to the front. I was like, oh no, don't sit next to me. Please be in the wrong seat, wrong place.
He was originally, the guy he came with,
We're
I
behind
think they
us.
were supposed, but they got kicked out because the people who really
They
had
were
those
pissed.
tickets,
they were
they
mad.
weren't very friendly about it.
No, they were
Yeah.
not. And he sits next to us, and he does the exact same thing as he did throughout us. And like it was so hard to like pay attention. He smelled really bad, and like he had audible comments on like everything, and just like it's like, wow, that's really hot. Or like,
Yeah.
it was.
From that angle.
I was just like, no. It was just one of those moments where I was
Oh my
like, I
God.
leaned over to Dave in the middle of the movie, and I was like, Dave, remember that time where Jim like nearly had a panic attack and at us, and we talked about this story about this guy that just kind of should not have been there. This is him.
Well, and I wanted to say actually 2 things about that. One is it's probably a great thing that Jim chose a few days or a week ago, whenever it was, when he made his decision to finally ask for some help and get real serious medical help for his condition, which, by the way, I'm really, really proud of Jim for doing
we
that.
all are.
I mean, it's maybe the analogy has been used before, but if you break your leg and the bone is, out of the skin, the compound fracture, and you look down, it's pretty obvious for everyone around to go, you better go to the hospital. But when the condition, which is every bit as severe in a different way, is so difficult for anyone to see except him and his own head and what he's experiencing, for him to ask for help. He's such an obstinate, stubborn young man. For him to really ask for help, and for his friend BJ to say, yeah, let's get you help, and for then several of us who love him around in his inner circle to take steps to immediately get him help, and for it to still be happening, that he's in there getting the help that he needs. I'm very, very proud of him for that.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that you guys have let me step in for him in the meantime while he takes the much needed care of himself. And the second thing, I guess, is just the anecdote of, it's not an anecdote, it's just kind of something silly to say that it's a good thing he went in last week, because if last week didn't get him, sitting by that guy again would have got him.
Yeah.
He would have lost it. He told me in
I don't
Us.
think he would have made it.
He wouldn't have made
He
it.
told me in Us that he nearly like left, and I guarantee he would have left during John Wick 3. But to talk about John Wick 3 a little bit, to kind of go off a little bit, I've seen the other 2. I love the other 2. Dave has not seen them, so I was curious, and I told him not to go see it, just to kind of get a different perspective of people that haven't seen the third one and the first 2, to see if that kind of sways their opinion on the movie. Dave, I want to hear what you have to say about John Wick 3 first, and then I'll give mine after that.
Interestingly, I went years ago. I went to watch John Wick 1 on demand. I was really excited. I heard great things about it. This wonderful, amazing action movie. And I've always liked Keanu, and the range of this guy. And I watched. I knew I only had a few minutes, so I popped it on to the on demand on the big screen TV, and I watched about 15 minutes of Wick 1, and had to go on to whatever I was doing, maybe sleep. And very next day, I was going to finish the movie, and it was no longer on demand. Sometime later, I was like, I'm going to see if John Wick is back on demand, and found no, it's not. But number 2 is. Oh, what the heck? I'll watch number 2. I only got a few minutes. I'll go ahead and start it. I started it and didn't get back to it for another week or two. And lo and behold, I went to watch that one again, and it was off demand. And I guess maybe that's me being cheap, but I didn't, order the pay version of it. And so then circle all the way down the road to where you said, let's go see John Wick 3. So I had a real basic, limited working knowledge of the dog.
Yeah.
And I knew that was a big deal in the story, and his wife, and that's about the extent of the storyline. Watching all of number 3, that's the one piece that I missed. Is I like to be part of the tale. Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite things about movies, whether they're action or adventure or whatever they are. I like to be part of the tale, the story, that carries the momentum of the scene. And I could tell I was in the dark a lot of the time. So I, as a standalone movie, I missed some elements that I just wish I was privy to, and I would have wanted to have seen 1 and 2. Are you looking at your watch like, come on, Dave, shorten up your answer?
I get notifications telling me to stand up every now and then.
Get it going. Oh, okay, cool. As far as like the standalone value of the movie itself, after you said it, you leaned over after 10 minutes and was like, that was only 10 minutes. And we had just been taken on this adventure, this action ride. And I don't know if it was halfway through. It was about halfway through, maybe 3/4 the way through. All I wanted was for John to get a nap and a sandwich. I was so exhausted. I wanted a nap and a sandwich. I was so exhausted watching Keanu Reeves constantly battling for his life. It exhausted me to see him working so hard. I don't know if the movie was too long. I wouldn't say that it is. It was too long for me because I need to watch that in 2 parts. I needed a break in the middle. I needed a nap and a sandwich before I could finish it.
That's a good point, because I thought the first 2 acts probably the best that John Wick is.
Amazing.
The best at it, at its best. I still think John Wick 1's my favorite. This one is right behind it though. But John Wick 3, the first 2 acts, constantly going. You could barely take a breath, but once you do hit that breath, I feel like it took a little while to get back going to close out the 3rd act, and the 3rd act kind of seemed like there was like 2 or 3 different endings. Like I was like, okay, here's the end. Oh wait, no, here's the end, and then it finally ended, and I thought the last probably 30 minutes where it seemed longer than it actually was, but it still was a good time from start to finish. Leaving the theater, I was telling Dave, like, I would not have assumed that the one thing that I took from the movie would be the cinematography and the shots in the movie. There are so many beautifully shot scenes in this movie that it's incredible that I was just like, because people are dying in front of me, and just amazing action, and that's the John Wick series. They're always incredible when it comes to their action sequences. But like, I was like kind of looking at the landscape of Morocco or something like that. You just see all the colors on the screen, or you're in downtown New York City and it's dark and gloomy, but it's still lit very well, and you can see all these things. And you're in the middle of the desert, and you get like kind of a landscape of John Wick climbing up on a desert. And then it cuts to a dark, like a night scene in the same desert. And it's just like so many different shots, so many different composition kind of things that the director took time. He didn't need to do it. It's an action movie where people just die. It's known for killing the most people in movie history. The first one broke the record for most deaths in a movie. The second one topped it. I guarantee the third one did the same thing. So they didn't need to take the extra time to make the shots look as cinematic, as beautiful as it did, and
they didn't need to make it worth the audience's time, but they did if they wanted to do, which I think they accomplished. Is they put masters of the craft in all the positions, and they let everybody who was great at what they do participate in this epic adventure action story.
Exactly, and John Wick's always done a good job of kind of adding new characters. Dave was asking me, he's like, "Oh, who are the people from the other movies?" And I was like, I think there's only 4. There's Ian McShane, there's Keanu Reeves, there's the bailiff. I forgot his name. And Lawrence Fishburne. Those are the 4 people that are in every single one of the movies. Everyone else is new, which I have noticed that John Wick does really well, is bringing on these new characters and making them stand alone. Like Common was the one in John Wick 2 that stood out for me. He was awesome. And then Halle Berry in John Wick 3, equally as awesome. She was able to stand alone as her own thing and be a part of the movie and have her own story, that she's not like a knockoff John Wick. She had her own way to take out people, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So
those dogs, the dogs. Oh my goodness,
they have
dogs.
this.
No spoilers.
There's no dog.
I'm just saying the dogs are amazing.
John Wick has this thing with like the series alone with dogs just are very special. So I love everything with the dogs.
I was very impressed with those dogs. The dog trainers. They were a lot of very, very, very talented professionals working on that movie.
So we have a few more minutes left. We're gonna talk about what's coming up next week for people to watch. But this week you should definitely be going to see John Wick. I highly suggest going to see it. But
I mean, unless you don't like a whole bunch of people dying in front of you.
Even of my family members or people that kind of just don't like rated R movies, it is very brutal. It is. There's so many, but like I want to say where to kind of flashback when I saw Drive. There's a lot of points in that movie where I had to cover my eyes because it was so grotesque, and it's like, oh, I can't watch this. Whereas John Wick is in a different realm where it's exciting like violence. Like I was like, oh wow, like my hands like cover over my face and like I like audible like it's like holy cow, that was awesome. So like it's a different kind of thing. It's an action, not so much as like terrifyingly violent things. So if violence is kind of your thing that you just don't like watching, I suggest giving it a try, because I think it's worth it.